I hope you guys are all ready. Hold on tight. I'm going to give you a quick background of what we did to actually get to where we are today, and I'll give you more insights on where we want to go tomorrow and where we stand right now. But basically, well, CMA CGM, to give you a little bit of background, is a container ship company. It's one of the leaders in the transportation of goods and merchandise over container ships. And about roughly 3 years ago, they decided to really go full data centric and to really transform the company in order to really develop the data culture within the group and to work with data in better ways. And all this transformation, obviously, as it's often done, is really carried out by 3 main pillars, which are people, methodology, and tools. And basically, what happened was we around this methodology, we organized some called data days, where we get collaborators from CMA CGM around the table, and we present them use cases or use case stories, user stories, sorry, where we tell them what successes we had around data governance and how we worked around data governance to deliver or to accelerate the transformation of data products. I would say, going back to API, the API governance that's been set up throughout this story is part of a story here we'll be telling today. It's not over yet. We've started it a year and a half ago, I guess. We started working with this team called the API Factory team. And within the API Factory team, there is another team which is called API Governance, which is really in charge of governing the API. But what happened was they were taking, obviously, they were taking the governance around APIs around a technical level and not really around a functional level. So that's where we started working with them. So here you'll see that some of the data citizens here that we work with, amongst them, we identified some people within the API Governance Factory team and the API Governance team to work with and to get things moving. Again, we have the 3 pillars here. What we did was define a framework to work with that team. Especially, I'll present part of the framework in a couple slides. Obviously, the tool we are using to govern APIs within the company is Collibra on one side for all the functional, to bring all the functional or business context to APIs. And we also have an in-house API cockpit tool, which is maintained by the API governance and API factory teams. So we basically, around APIs, I would say, in terms of tools, we really have 2 tools going on. In terms of people, we have the data governance team here at CMA CGM, which is around 11 people or 13 people. I don't remember where we stand now because it keeps moving. It's roughly the same on the API governance team, and we were 2 people dedicated to working with the API governance teams on the different topics we will see. The important thing with people here, what we tried to start right from the beginning, and whether we're talking about API or not, was to really break the silos within companies. So the data governance team at CMA CGM, which is composed of data governance officers, is really here to, I guess, preach the right word and go out and build partnerships with the people that we work with. We have, of course, the business side on one side, and we have our key partners on the other side. And the API teams obviously are part of the key partners we work with, and we identify the key people within these key partners. And they're not limited, of course, to the API. We worked with BI partners, we worked with the architects, the data architects, we work with the cybersecurity teams, etc. And each one of these partners that we work with, we have defined what we call a data operating model, which is basically the framework of collaboration that we set up together in terms of where we stand and where we want to go in terms of data governance. As you probably know or may not know, the hard thing with setting up data governance when you start from nothing is basically where do you start, how do you get there, what do you want to do, I guess, the big bang and work with everyone within the company, or you work use case by use case, or you want, how do you, the main line here is how do you reference the important data for your company that will bring the maximum value. And for the APIs, we had exactly the same questions. When we started the topic, we actually want to see our API partners and say, well, what are the use cases or what are the pain points that you encounter with APIs today, and where do you want to go with us, and how do we get there? So when we started working with APIs, we really listed out the requirements, and we worked around these different requirements, and that's what I will be presenting, the results of these requirements and where we stand on that. Of course, it's always the same for every data asset, I guess. What we're looking around for APIs with Collibra is to bring business context to the technical elements, what we don't have in the Swagger files. And we want to, one of the objectives was to really give visibility to the entire group on what was being developed, what was being, I guess, shipped out or sold to customers in terms of services, digital services, and see how it all interacted or interconnected together. I think the real strength of Collibra on that is being able to document and establish links and relationships between different data assets to really bring context, understanding, and value around that. And I think one of the successes that we've had with Collibra, obviously around APIs, is to build an API catalog, which was not limited to a technical listing of Swagger definitions, but really something more interconnected with business dimensions and business objects. I guess that this slide is it dates back from last year, but it's a pretty good slide to show you how we worked around that. What we did achieve on these 3 pillars right now is that we've onboarded, well, it's higher than that now, obviously, but we've onboarded hundreds of data citizens through trainings called data citizen passports. We have different levels, going from bronze to silver. The important thing to remember on that training part is that this passport citizenship is actually a requirement for some of the key partners that we work with around data governance, meaning, for example, that for the API Factory members, we actually asked of them that they all get their data citizen silver passports in order to move on and to be able to get to working with us on use cases. And I guess that's one of the I would say key success of actually getting people coming into a platform and getting information within the platform and understanding what really is the value that is being driven behind that. In terms of methodology, I did not go into details or seed, retrieve a fruit, but obviously the idea here is that every use case that we catch is actually seed that needs more or less work around that. So what we try to do around that is collect the needs, contact the people to get the right information, and document it within the key, which is our Collibra data governance platform that we've rebranded. Well, we want to get it into the platform because we want to share the knowledge and we really want to put it into visibility. And that brought us to the last part, which is the referencing and the governance of assets within Collibra, in which, of course, we have the APIs, and I'll have a focus on that. Same for this one. I think it's I don't think we've updated this one for a while, but obviously what we ended up doing on APIs is identify product owners around the APIs, and we still have issues identifying who are the product owners behind the APIs. That's something we're still working on, because you have basically two types of APIs. There's the ones that are developed by the API factory when the business doesn't know how to develop them by themselves. And we have APIs, of course, which are developed directly by the business, which have to follow guidelines of API developments that are given by the API governance team, but which are not directly under the ownership of that API factory team, which sometimes builds them. So we do have some issues with identifying exactly who are the product owners of the APIs who are not under the ownership of the API factory here. So I guess this first pillar here, it's nice to know to bring back, in the sense that there's always a work to be done to identify who are the right people behind the products and who you can contact in case of a question around an API, etc. And it's not so easy to actually get the information within the company. In terms of referencing of data assets, on the slide it reached 48 external APIs. I think we have more than that now, but they're still all in bronze, because I'll go back to the governance path, but we are still having issues getting really information behind these APIs. And typically something we don't have yet, and which is really surprising, is where are these APIs sourced from which systems are they actually getting the information and that they're exposing to customers. And that's not been documented anywhere, or it's been partially documented by the API governance team. So we're having a lot of trouble actually finding information, which is kind of surprising, especially on referential APIs. Nonetheless, I was talking about the data operating model earlier, right? And we set up, so this is just an extract of what we've actually set up with digital teams. But what we try to do through this template is, the first thing was to actually convince them of the benefits of a partnership and what value was going to generate for us, but also for them. I mean, if you're not bringing any value or any easing up their work at some point, the thing will just not take. So we worked this around with goals and benefits, with collaboration scopes, etc. And the first step that we did, even before modelizing things in Collibra, was to reference or to list the data assets they wanted to work with us around. And so we just went to see them and we said, okay, you have APIs, but do you want to reference APIs? Do you want to reference the API endpoints? Do you have any data sets that you want to reference that could be exposed by APIs? What really are the assets that you want to put under governance and that you want to work around? And after some discussion, we ended up saying, okay, what's really important to you right now are the APIs and the API endpoints. And the API endpoints are important for CMA CGM in the sense that there are some private endpoints and there are some public endpoints, meaning that some of them are not externally exposed to customers and some of them are externally exposed for customers. And obviously you don't have the same objects and data objects exposed to customer than the ones that are exposed internally, because sometimes that's one of the needs of the API factory. They want to know which data is considered as non-exposable to customers. What's really considered as I would say, restricted or confidential data within CMA CGM, and that should not be part of the API endpoint. That was one of their needs. So again, around define, understand, trust, and develop value. What we ended up listing is, well, the first thing we were going to do was obviously to start building up the catalog of APIs and API endpoints, and we would open it to everyone. But that wasn't enough, because we would, if we stopped there, we would just be repeating what the API cockpit with the squaggers was doing, right? And we wanted to bring more value than that. So we wanted to go above that. We wanted to make sure that the APIs were governed, meaning that certain characteristics were being checked and filled in within the Collibra to bring business context and to bring value to everyone within the group. It took us, I would say, a good 6 months to work around the characteristics of the API governance path, in the sense that often we didn't have the right people or the availability of the people to work on that and to really think this through and list of the different characteristics we wanted for each governance level. But we did get it through after 6 months. So that was pretty nice. We asked them as well what their processes were, how they were developing APIs, how they were catching information, how they were putting them into production, etc. And what we did was just take what they had done, which is right here, and told them, okay, you've listed all these existing tasks in your process when you build up an API and deliver it, and you have an associated RASI to that. And here is where we are going to bring you added value by inserting ourselves, I guess, in the existing processes, because you tell us typically that you have data quality issues when you publish APIs, and if we arrive at the end of the development of the APIs, well, maybe you're plugged in the wrong sources and you're consuming the wrong data, or data that's not being governed or of bad quality, and maybe that's where we can already bring you added value, because you're not plugging yourself to the right source and you don't necessarily have that knowledge that we can share with you. So on the bottom here this slide, what we did was just list the new tasks in the partnership that we suggested to them, and we said, are you okay with that? Do you think we can bring you value by doing these tasks? And they were happy to add these tasks in the partnership, and to actually well, get things under control, I would say, and not arrive at the end when the API has been developed and things are not working well, right? So every time to make things quite simple, we asked to be at the beginning of a process of API design, because that's obviously the first step that happens, is when they list their ingredients to build up their APIs, and we want to be sure that they are taking the right ingredients to make their API recipe. And at the end of that process, when you deliver the API and you put it into production, we ask them just to be to reference any new APIs that was being delivered into the key, and not to wait and not to have to catch up any API release that was going to arrive after this delivery. So we did on the last step. We actually did get every time an API is released, we do get an email with the Swagger configuration that we load into the key. I'm not sure about the API design parts yet. I haven't seen, on my part at least, any APIs we started designing on working with us. However, I think we do it, because I did catch 2 new projects where we were developing APIs. So I think this is starting to at least it's starting to be under control on the discover, on the proof phase. I reworked this diagram. So one of the difficulties that we had with the Collibra was how do we model out APIs? What exists? How do we model out APIs in Collibra? And what do we want to do with them? And how do we link it with the rest of our operating model? So if I switch to my if I switch to my environment here, I'll just log in back because I haven't been connected for quite a while here. The first question that we asked ourselves was, okay, well, where do we create APIs in the asset type tree, right? I'll just close this scheduled maintenance message by clicking here. Okay. So going into the asset types, we decided to create an API. So the first discussion was, well, where do we create the API? Should it be technology asset, or should it be another type of asset? And we simply decided to create an API here with a definition as a technology asset.
So, sorry, Max.
Yeah.
Are you sharing another screen?
Let me see. I understand what's happening. Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Did you see my
yes,
rebranded the key? Okay, so we've rebranded. We've rebranded Collibra into the key as the key, and since I was not showing my screen here, I just went into the settings page and clicked on the asset types here, and I was navigating in the asset type tree here to show you that the API asset type, we created it since it wasn't out of the box, right, as a technology asset. And under that, we decided to create the API endpoints as well under the API. And I'll show you why in just a minute. So first question you'll have to address is, where do I create the APIs and API endpoints? What components do I want to list? And how do I link them together, right? Going back to the presentation, what we decided to do is to keep it simple, because the more we moved on within the operating model and the more bricks we added and the more complex it was getting, the harder it is to maintain, the harder it is to explain. So we've started this series of how do I, because we had a lot of questions from our end users, including our data governance officers, which were starting having a hard time manipulating the operating model. So this diagram just shows you that an API can contain one or several endpoints. Usually it's several endpoints that they contain. Again, in the beginning, we had decided to get only the endpoints for the get method, and then we just went for it all. We were getting everything, patch, delete, update, everything, even if it's not exposing data, because we've had some cases where we wanted to get other methods than get and actually get the schema and the data objects behind that. As I mentioned, we wanted to keep it simple, so we decided that an API endpoint implemented a table, even if it's a schema, in fact, that's been exposed really by an API endpoint with objects behind. But for us, we decided that it would be of type table, and that table would contain objects that would be columns. Going back to the key, if I show you how it really pops up, I guess I'll just call vessel referential here. Okay. On the API again, so I have a functional name here, which is different than the technical name, but both are important, because some people talk with technical name and some others talk with functional names. And even in some cases, we don't have a functional name, we only have a technical name, which is kind of a hassle, because again, there are different ways of naming an API within the company, and that's why we have to work with both I guess, naming conventions, because else we would not be able to understand or find what we were talking about. It's pretty crazy, but even on referential APIs, you find out that there are 4 or 5 terms for naming an API. That's actually the same within the company, even on APIs. This information that you see here, the definition, the location, functional domain, etc., is actually most of it is actually coming from the Swagger file, of course. We synchronize this creation of APIs within the key. As you may guess, we do not create them manually. We create them automatically through an import through Collibra's import API. By the way, APIs are being created, and what we do is we get the Swagger files. If I show you just in a couple minutes, what we do is we get into a Swagger. Okay, I'll just bring this. I'll just bring this up. We get the Swagger files sent by the teams, right? And we put them on a local machine, which is one of the system administrator machines. We are two who are able to do this. And every Swagger file that's just put into a local directory is called by a Python script, which basically converts the Swagger file into a JSON file that's being able to be read by the import API and sent to Collibra and create the right assets. And that's it. I mean, if you've got an input, it generates an output that's imported by the API, then you create things quite fast, and you actually have this last synchronization date with external system, which is really the last time we synchronize this Swagger with the key, which is really the date that we keep here. I was mentioning the API endpoints. So after a couple iterations, we did add the method. We decided not to modelize the method as a different asset type, but to get it directly into the description of the endpoint. It was easier for us to read like this and to maintain and to answer business needs, I guess. So behind these endpoints, I'll just click on this get vessels IMO thing. I have an object called vessel, and this object called vessel, of course, it's where it gets interesting. Oops, I went too fast. It's exposing, of course, data objects that are exposed by this table from the API. The interesting thing here is that once you have this technical lineage, right, of the API, you probably want to know what a beam is, or a builder is, or built here is in terms of business context. Often it's well documented and it's understandable. How about I get that? Let's see, API to business data lineage view and see what happens here. Okay, I have my API here, which we know is sourced from my CTM vessel, which is really based on Semarchi. It's exposing here these two endpoints that are sharing, you'll notice, the same object, meaning that I have two endpoints that expose the same object. And I'll just expand this one for the example. The interesting thing is to make the lineage right to the data objects that you have within the company. So this refer plugs here, which is a column that's really named well in the API, and that's where we get lucky with APIs, because you can actually guess what the data dimensions really are behind the names of APIs, which is not often the case when you get things from SAP, right? And we make the link between the technical asset here and the business asset here, which is really in our blue world, where I know that the refer plugs in this number of refer plugs, great. And I have a classification around that. It's not a personal data. I can see a data type of whole number, and I can see it's contained in several data entities, in fact, and it's part of the equipment data domain. This link between the blue world and the red world, I would say, is the most important and the one that brings the most value, and it's also the hardest to do. For example, this one, status, is it a vessel status or is it something else? Let's hope. I don't think I clicked on the right relationship here. Up, there we go. So this thing here, we talked to the teams and we said, okay, is this a CMA vessel status? Yes, it's a CMA vessel status. Okay, what's a vessel status? It's a type of contract of vessel, etc. So what we want to really do is this link here between the objects, the finest levels of the APIs and the business to keep it very simple. That's one of the things we try to do and we're trying to do right now. And we actually have a project for that to automatize the usage of business dimensions or business assets and be able to make that link between columns and those business elements in a more automated or easier way, at least, because right now we're doing it manually. So really, once you've set it up, once you've set up the different components of the API, you want to make the business the links to the business elements. We did have a long discussion around datasets and how we were going to connect datasets around APIs. What we ended up doing in the latest version, we've reviewed this 3 times over the past year, but what we did end up saying was that the API may be using some datasets that are cataloged within the company, and it's not exposing directly datasets. It's really implementing tables, and these tables that it's showing, which are not really tables for an API, but again, it doesn't matter. It's for simplicity's sake. These tables can be sourced for other tables, and they can be sourced for datasets. So you can build quite a lot of datasets with an API, especially referential ones. So we're trying to document the different datasets that are being made available through APIs, but that's not the easiest task. The last topic we wanted to address were which are the systems that are the source for the APIs. And again, surprisingly, this is not documented anywhere. We're having a lot of hard time finding the information. So we're working with the API governance team to get this into Collibra, as this information is not available in other tools, even in the enterprise architecture, the enterprise, application management tool. So we're trying to get that information to Collibra as well. The last big brick I want to show, I talked about it in the beginning, was the governance path. So we tried to, again, to make things simple. We have the same levels for governance for every asset in our platform. It goes from candidate to gold. And for the APIs and API endpoints, we defined with the teams, API factory team, what they thought was necessary to get in terms of characteristics moving in the different levels. And if you want an API that's in gold level, we obviously want the business context linked to the API. So in the end, to get it to the gold level, and it's not necessarily an objective to get all the APIs within gold level, but in the end, what we want is necessarily to get the link between business objects and APIs. And for API endpoints, the interesting thing is, and I think I'm missing something here, because we reworked it, if I'm not mistaken, and it's probably that's fine. One of the characteristics that I don't see here, and which I'm ticking, is they want to know if the API is endpoint is a private or public. They want an API endpoint classification on the silver level to be able to tell data owners and data stewards, hey, you're the data owner of vessel data, right? Do you know we're exposing this and that data to customers, and is this okay for you? We want to really bring awareness around these APIs We want to bring awareness of which data elements under their ownership are exposed to external parties, I guess. That's it. If you've managed to hang on until now, you're pretty good. You've understood really the basics of what we did and where we want to go. I guess it really all comes down to getting the APIs under Collibra, modelizing it, making the link to business context, and getting under control the information that are consumed and exposed by these APIs to bring in awareness, and and that's it, to increase trust in these APIs and put them into visibility. Not really hard.